if you're over that $198,000 figure that I mentioned, this question is not for you. But everybody else, yes. One, if you got the right amount and have it in hand. Two, if you got something but you don't think it's the right amount. And three, if you think you're entitled to something but have received nothing at all. With that, we're going to go on to one more question, and then I'm going to recognize Councilman Ryu.
Okay, Congressman, we have Jerry. Jerry, you're on.
Yes, Congressman, this is Jerry in Encino. My first question was that with all the protests that are going on in the state of California and also across the U.S., are we going to be prepared for the new cases of the COVID-19 that come about from all of this?
Jerry, obviously we're not prepared for this virus as it is, and we had lockdown and a number of things that had bent the curve. These events are similar to those, what we see on our television set, similar to those that have resulted in spikes. I urge people when they demonstrate to be wearing a mask, to be urging others to wear masks, and your natural tendency is going to be to want to hug and shake hands, especially with people you agree with. There's nothing that's more touching. We saw in Flint, Michigan, where the demonstrators and the sheriff were hugging, and yet I'm not sure that Dr. Goldman is going to recommend that at this time. So, Doctor, you've seen what you see on TV. We need to stand up for what's right in our country. But are we doing it in a way that's going to spread the disease?
Unfortunately, it probably will cause some spread of the disease, and I'm just hoping that the protesters are wearing their masks and distancing, and that what we see on TV isn't necessarily always representative of exactly what's going on in any one place. But if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, do we need to get ready for these kinds of mass protests in the middle of a pandemic, I wouldn't have guessed that we'd be in this place today. And I don't think anybody was ready for this. And I just hope that all the effort that's been underway, as you point out, to increase the testing, the contact tracing, that we're more ready for this now than we would have been certainly a month ago. And I can only hope that we're able to get in front of whatever additional cases come about because of this.
And I'll point out, TV needs ratings. There are thousands of peaceful demonstrators and police officers who protect their right to demonstrate, may even agree with them. And that doesn't drive ratings. What drives ratings is if there are 20 things going on in LA County and one of them involves arrests and violence, that's what you see on television. And of course, there's very little social distancing when someone is being arrested. And so we may get a bit of a distorted picture in that what we're seeing on TV is the one demonstration that isn't going smoothly. And I know there have been thousands and thousands of people, some of whom I know in the San Fernando Valley demonstrating, and their practice is considerably less worrying from a medical perspective than some of the terrible scenes we see at night. Okay, we do have the results of the first. Some 81% say yes, they've received the money and they think it's the right amount. 6% got something but think it's the wrong amount, and 13% have not received anything. There is guidance on my webpage, and I want to urge people to see that not only for help on the economics of the COVID-19 crisis, but for information about what's going on in Washington, particularly with regard to Black Lives Matter and the host of issues we're dealing with. That webpage is bradsherman.house.gov. House is for House of Representatives.gov. with that, I guess I should be introducing our second guest, and that is Councilman David Ryu. David,
Congressman, he is delayed a bit, so...
Oh, he's been delayed. So
yeah,
we're going to go on to one of our call-in questions. One of the reasons you're going to want to go to that webpage, bradsherman.house.gov, is you can RSVP for our next town hall. And if you do that, you can submit a question in writing. And that's what Alice Nassanow, excuse me. Alice, I hope I pronounced your last name right, did when she wrote in and asked us, what's the best way to show our support for the movement to eliminate racial bias and discrimination without supporting violence and looting and without breaking social distancing? And I'll first, I think you've got to look at Barack Obama's speech from yesterday. As he points out, the overwhelming majority of participants in these demonstrations have been peaceful, courageous, responsible, and inspiring. They deserve our respect and our support. There are at least three ways to respond. One is to demonstrate, but that during the daytime, not during the hours that are curfewed, and in a way that respects social distancing. A second thing to do is to demonstrate in the other world we live in. We live in both the real physical world and the online world. And if you're out on the street marching, you are seen by people who are out on the street and can see you march. If you're on Facebook, on Twitter, you may be seen by more people doing it that way. So you can demonstrate your views online or outside. The second thing is to vote. And the third thing is to affect the outcome of elections. I'll give you an example. Right tonight, Stephen King is up for re-election in the state of Iowa. This Stephen King is the most, is considered the most bigoted member of the House of Representatives. His own Republican Party has kicked him off his committees. That is the most severe punishment that you can give someone who serves in the House of Representatives other than expelling them. And it's really up to voters, almost always, to expel someone for Congress. He's removed from committees. And I know people who have sat in Los Angeles and called into, I think it's Western Iowa, to urge people to vote against Stephen King. Now, if you think I've got Stephen King wrong and that his reelection is the way to bring our country together, you're wrong. But you could have been on the other side of this. But that election is over. But there are going to be quite a number of elections between June and September, primary elections, where it used to be that to volunteer in a campaign, you had to drive out to Iowa and go door to door. Now nobody's going door to door. Everybody's on the phone. And you can volunteer in any campaign you want anywhere in the country if you feel that a particular candidate is going to move this country forward. And so that is something you can do in the primaries. And then we have a general election coming up where there are races all over California. Or if you're particularly focused on the White House, you may think California has decided its electoral college votes. You can call into any other state. So I would urge people to get involved for whatever side of whatever election you believe will move this country forward. And then a fourth thing you can do is to donate. And I'll just mention a few organizations that are out there. There's the George Floyd Memorial Fund set up by his family, GoFundMe. There's the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. and there's the Brennan Center for Justice. So those are among the charitably groups that you could get involved in. So there are a lot of ways to try to move the country forward, and none of them involve throwing a brick through a window. All of them involved working to make the country better.
The councilman has joined us.
Yes, he is. So, Councilman David Ryu is the first Korean American to serve on the Los Angeles City Council and only the second Asian American to be elected to the City Council. He represents a number of communities on the other side of the hill, but in the valley he represents Sherman Oaks, America's best named city, Toluca Lake, and Van Nuys. And Van Nuys, he doesn't represent all of Van Nuys, but a substantial portion of Van Nuys. And many of you know that Van Nuys has been, for the San Fernando Valley, the community that's had both the largest demonstrations and people who have inspired me and others with their dedication to trying to make America better. And unfortunately, Van Nuys has been one of the places where there has been vandalism. Valley-wide, last night there were 300 arrests. That sounds like a lot, and yet there were many, many thousands and thousands of people protesting and showing their dedication to a Constitution that not only protects our rights, but I think urges us to assemble peaceably and petition our government. So, Councilman, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what the city is doing, what our police department is doing, and after you do, I'm going to have another survey question directly relevant to your comments.
Thank you, Congressmember, and thank you for inviting me to your town hall, and I apologize for being on the phone, getting on the call late. I obviously was on the phone with various city departments, making sure that the district was well taken care of. But again, I'm very proud to represent a part of your district, Congressmember, District 30, and of course your most favorite part, Sherman Oaks. And of course, I do have like literally a sliver of Van Nuys on the border of Sherman Oaks and Van Nuys. But it's a pleasure to work with you. I mean, you've been such a great partner in Washington D.C., and you've been one of the first folks to call for action on many, many issues. So I thank you for your service, sir. And I also want to thank all of the residents who are joining in this evening. And I know you've talked a lot about the murder of George Floyd, as well as I know you have experts on the coronavirus pandemic, so I won't go in depth too much, but I do want to say that it goes without saying that we are in a very unprecedented and historic moment, you know, where our city and our nation is not just going through one crisis, but a number of crises that have compounded on one another. Even before this pandemic hit, as you all know, our city was already facing a tremendous amount of inequality that was manifested itself as homelessness and housing issues. But this unexpected pandemic only served to expose those inequities in poverty and in race. Then, of course, we had this tragic and unjust murder of George Floyd. The pain and the injustice felt across this nation and across our city is real. And it calls for self-reflection, and it calls for change. As for the pockets of unrest, it's predominantly centralized in Hollywood, Mid-City, a little on the west side, and of course, most recently in the Van Nuys area. And I remain in close contact with every level of government, because we want to make sure the City of LA's goal is to keep peaceful protesters, small businesses, and all residents safe. And Congressman Yana, you wanted me to talk a little bit about the COVID, and thank you for talking about it, because we're still in the pandemic. We were able to flatten the curve, but it is not over. We are still getting infections, and a safer at home order is still in some parts in order. So please keep in mind that safety, especially if you're a vulnerable population, if you're a senior citizen or an older adult, or if you have underlying health conditions, please feel free to contact my office, which is why, I made that one of my top priorities. You could go to my website and click on the COVID, and you could see all of the different resources available to you, especially if you're an older adult. We have meal deliveries. We have, we could pick up medication. I know like supermarkets have senior hours, but if possible, and if you can, don't go out. We will find someone to help you. And in many cases, I have a program called Mon Ami, which connects your local neighbors who wants to volunteer with you. People who want to volunteer could volunteer, and people who need service can get services. And if you go to my website, you could sign up for that. And of course, yes, COVID testing site was closed for about a day or two, but they are opening. They're slowly opening up. The biggest one, the one that's open that I know for sure, is the Dodger Stadium testing site. But from the mayor's office, I believe more will be opening in the coming days, as soon as there is capacity from LAPD. And there are plenty of tests available. It's easy to get an appointment. The mayor, if you go to the mayor's website or go to the corona-virus.la to get registered. But I also wanted to let you know that besides testing, you go to my website, and if you want to know about, we try to make it a one-stop shop with all the information from local government, city programs, to county programs, to state and federal programs, as well as nonprofit sector. So if you go to my website, you could sign up for Mon Ami to either be a volunteer or get information about Mon Ami, to either be a volunteer or get services or learn about upcoming town halls that I'm doing. If you want to learn more about Project Room Key, or if you are a hotel, motel owner who wants to get involved with Project Room Key, which helps get our unhoused neighbors off the streets, because they are one of the most vulnerable populations, and we do not want them to get COVID, nor if they do, it also spreads to the community. And they're also on the website, you can find information about rent relief, all the current laws, tenant outreach. There's also a connection with Jewish Free Loan, which is something that I've personally partnered up with in my office. They are giving 0% interest loans that could be used for rent. This is residential rent or commercial, your business rent, or as well as it could be used for any variety of things that you might need. It is 0% interest, and in some exceptions, they do give grants as well, small grants, but for small businesses, I believe you could get a loan up to $25,000. So I highly encourage you to contact them. You can go to my website or go to them directly, and if you need any assistance, you can call my office. But this coronavirus is not over. This pandemic is not over. The only way we're going to get out of this is to make sure that we have increased testing capacity. It's not just standalone testing capacities, but I'm sure you've been hearing that we are now, the city is working with the county and making sure that nursing homes, hospitals, vulnerable populations are getting tested as well through strike teams. And of course, I've been very lucky to have a lot of people who are benevolent and who wanted to donate. So my office has been facilitating personal protective equipment, PPEs, getting the donations and donating it to either frontline workers, various clinics or hospitals, or grocery workers, or whoever it is. So that's what we've been working on, and thank you, Congressman Sherman. If there's any questions.
Thanks
Yes,
for mentioning loans and grants to small business. I do want to talk a little bit about the PPP program. We have put more money into that program, and it is still available. You can still apply if you haven't. We can help you apply. You can call our district office, 818-501-9200, or go to that website, bradsherman.house.gov. And we have overwhelmingly passed through the House a bill that I'm pretty sure will pass the Senate. Hey, we passed it 417-1. That makes it easier to turn that PPP loan into a grant that you do not have to pay back, by saying that you have a much longer period of time. I believe it goes from, we took it from 8 weeks to 24 weeks to spend 3/4 of the loan on payroll. so we've made it more flexible. In a much larger a group of businesses is going to find that they do not have to pay back the PPP, and money is still available. I also described David's district a little bit. I should point out that my district is, I'm known for Sherman Oaks just because that's where I'm from, but and it's the coincidence of the name, but I represent the South Valley and the West Valley, representing about half the residents of the San Fernando Valley. Now let's go on to our next survey question.